Asia Tech Podcast. Voice of the Asian tech ecosystem.
Okay, welcome to the first ever PitchDeck podcast. So I'm your host today. I'm Jodie Collins. You may have heard me as the host of another one of the podcasts on the Asia Tech Podcast Network, Founders in Asia. And we're really excited to today be launching the first ever of these PitchDeck podcasts. And as a part of this, we are actually interviewing our interviewer. So the person who normally is the one who you hear on the Asia Tech Podcasts, we're going to welcome Graham Brown, who is the founder of Asia Tech Podcasts, and today is the person who we're going to be interviewing.
Yeah, I'm in the chair.
Yeah, you are.
About time. It's karma.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing all about it. So the purpose of the PitchDeck podcast is to actually hold a series of podcasts where we speak with startup founders and give them advice on how to go to market. So we're actually going to be hearing about their story, where they're at, what their vision is for their business. And we've actually then got a couple of special guests, experts who are going to be giving them some advice as well on how they can go to market, how they put together their pitch, how they succinctly put together their vision, what's the way to build their story to go to market. So today I want to welcome two of our guests. So first of all, Rena Neo, who's the managing partner for Platform E here in Singapore.
Hello.
Welcome, Rena.
Hi, everyone.
And Dennis Poe, who is the founder of a finance and company secretarial business here in Singapore, Aegis Partners.
Hi, everyone. Yeah. Hi.
Great. Welcome. So let's get into it then. So Graham, you are the one in the hot seat today. So
Feels strange.
So look, what we want to just go through is just hear a bit about your story. We want to hear your backstory, the invention of Asia Tech Podcast. Tell us a little bit about the background and where you see this business going.
So, I mean, really the story with Asia Tech Podcast is about, I'm really passionate about what's going on in Asia right now. And I find that there's like thousands and thousands of stories of founders who have great stories to tell, but just not an outlet or a platform to share those stories. So there's a lot of amazing people doing amazing things in Asia. And I want to share those. I want to create a platform for that. And there really is nothing. I mean, you can go to, what is out there right now?
Yeah.
There are demo days. There are, like traditional media, startup-y type media, but there really is nothing to tell the story of the founder. So, I mean, the backstory is like, I'm passionate about people, I'm passionate about culture and storytelling. I love all of that. And there's a place for that, I think, in the Asian century. So, putting it all together is really about how do we build something and give these people a voice. That's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great.
So I'm here.
And sounds good. Yeah. I'm aligned. I'm on board.
Great.
Asia Tech Podcast. Find out more at ATP.show.
So, look, how long has Asia Tech Podcast been running for? And is this the core of the business idea that you want to talk to us about today?
Yeah, so I started Asia Tech Podcasts, a year and a half ago with a co-founder who is not with us today, shall remain nameless. But like with all situations, it's like you start a business with somebody and it doesn't work out, and it works okay when there's no money involved, but when money gets involved, things change. So anyway, that happened. We started it really as a hobby, because it was something that we were both passionate about, and passionate about startups. There really was a space in Asia that people weren't telling this story, and somebody had to do it. So we kind of stepped up and just got started, and it started off just as like us jamming on a weekly basis, and just riffing about whatever we thought was interesting at the time. That's 18 months ago. And then what happened was people started contacting us and saying, "Hey, I like your podcast. Can I be on it?"
Yeah.
So we started saying, "Okay, let's interview other people because it's interesting, but it shouldn't just be about us." So we started interviewing other people, and I think Rena was one of our first guests, I think.
Right.
Going way back, right?
Number 5.
Yeah.
Episode number 5.
One of the inaugural few guests at the early stage. So, there were, again, and I think what was interesting, like Rena's not a natural self-promoter, but
I'm shy.
Yeah, you are. But, I think that there's a lot of people in our scene who are natural self-promoters, and they get a lot of coverage. But then there's this big group of people who are just busy getting on and doing stuff.
Yeah.
and they're not out there talking about it. And so the podcast started attracting those people, and we started approaching them, and with a little bit of arm twisting, they made great guests. So we got up to that stage, and the key to that sort of first 6 months was, I saw that the challenge of building a podcast in any media company is the process. People think that they can start a podcast or start any kind of media project, and they give up after 4 or 5 because, they're spinning plates doing different things. So I thought, my background is artificial intelligence. So, I thought I could automate a whole bunch of this stuff, right? Build these processes, build this automation, because I thought, well, if it works for us, who else could it work for? So the challenge was automate that as much as possible. So I started building the automation and all the back office staff that made it really easy to build a podcast. And so, in time we'd done like 50 podcasts and then 100 podcasts. And then I remember there were days when we were like interviewing 8 people, 9 people in one day. And we had it all like back to back, boom, 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 boom. But it was amazing because, we got to speak to all these people, and every single person we spoke to, we learned about their business and they learned about our business, and there was a connection there. So we thought, well, that really solves our business problem of building a media company. Why just keep it to ourselves? Now let's go and see who else could use this.
Yeah.
So then I said that, let's talk to other potential hosts. And obviously, Jody, that's where you came on board.
Yep.
Dennis, that's where you came on board.
Yep.
So that was the next step to say, okay, now Asia Tech Podcast is not a podcast, it's a platform.
Yeah.
It's a proper media company.
And then, so I want to explore, that a little bit. That transition from, actually, it started out as a passion project because you saw a gap in the market and thought, actually, we think there's a lot of opportunities, some really interesting content there. Let's explore how we can, take that out there because we think that there's interest. So then it's morphed into, actually, there's potential to turn this into a business. So what's the transition there where you sort of realised, okay, actually there is really something in here. And as you've gone through that transition, have you then built out a business plan, for instance? Have you really started formalising things so that you can work out where you're taking this to?
Yes, to answer your question. No, we don't have all the answers yet. So that's obviously work in progress. But I think what it was, Jody, is that we, looking at Asia Tech Podcast, started off as a passion project, a hobby. And then what happened was really realising what the problem was that was out there. And the problem was that there's all these amazing startups and then all these amazing investors. And then they weren't connecting.
Right.
And I'm sure, and I'm curious to get Rena's perspective on this as well, but any investor, when they go in an early stage, they're investing in pretty much mostly that person more than anything, right? And that's 80% of it, right? And how do you then, so here's the problem is that these angel investors and even VCs, they don't have the resources to find out who these startups are and who the good ones are, and it's all sort of in a closed network around them.
Yeah.
But there's all these amazing startups out there who are not getting access to investors. It's a very closed market, or it's a very big market that requires a lot of resources. So I realized that the problem was that was a major problem. Bring these people together, build a platform to connect, start the best startups in Asia with the best investors.
Yeah.
And that was something which was drawing me in that couldn't be ignored because there was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really good angel investor networks in Asia, but they do their thing, and I think that they cover only a part of the market. If you look at some of the people that have been on, as an example, so you asked me about the business. Where is the business? Take for example all those Murudi graduates.
Yep.
Now some of them were amazing, and I've had a couple of people in here as well, and we've done the interviews with them. Now that they've graduated Murudi, the accelerator, what happens next? Where they just throw them out into the wild and they're done. So what happens? What's helping those companies and connecting them with investors and helping them continue that journey? So that's where the business was, because it was pulling me in and saying, look, there's an opportunity here. There's value to be made here. There's a connection that could be made here.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, then let's get your perspective on this, Rena.
Well, I'm glad Graham decided to move to Singapore with the pulses for Asia. And, like I said, we got to know each other through LinkedIn. And then we went on for the podcast. And it was, to me, it wasn't an interview, it was a conversation. And I think conversation is important. Most of the event that I go to, 5 minutes pitch, all the big rah-rah, it's just, at some point of time becomes noise. And it's so difficult to get people to talk, to have a proper conversation. And I think coming back to his point, to get startups talking about their story, the passion, I think it's very, very different, through a podcast interview like this versus, getting already, rehearsing 1,000 times and then presenting it to the investors in front of you.
Yeah.
And so what I like about Graham, although that, 1.5 years ago when I asked him, is it, something serious? He was like, no, it's just a hobby. I think, I just feel there's a gap and I just want to do it. I think that's the right attitude. Yep. Because if you see the gap and you're just sitting on it, somebody will build that.
Yeah.
And then you'll be like, I thought about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing anything about it.
What I'd love to get your perspective on is, and actually, if you can just tell us a little bit about what you do here so that listeners can understand a little bit about Platform E.
Yes.
Because I want to explore this idea of, I've got this passion project that I've started working on and it's now turned into something that looks like can be turned into a business versus I've got a business idea first of all. I want to talk about how well formed an idea needs to be first.
So I think the buzzword here is platform. Platform E is a initiative by Singapore Institute of Management, and SIM in short has more than 50 years of history. It started with $100,000 grant from EDB, asking the founder, Dr. Yu, to start training individuals in skill sets like managerial skill sets. Those days, but Singapore is going through industrialization. We need it. So fast forward 55 years later, SIM is basically now divided into a few divisions. So we have global education. We probably graduate more than 10,000 students every year. So we partner with different universities. We were the ones who actually built Unisim, and about a year ago, Unisim was made autonomous university, so it's now SUSS. And that's the time where the council members said, so what's next? The idea of starting a platform to encourage more people to think about being an entrepreneur as an alternative career of, studying hard, become a professional. So that's how it started. The reason why it's a platform, because we believe that, for us to do our work, we need many stakeholders, right? So entrepreneurship is not just about an idea. Is about the whole journey and whether the person is really ready for the journey. Like Graham said, especially in early stage, investors are really betting on that person because there's nothing. It's just, beautiful PowerPoint, that you can probably, sort of plug all the numbers you want. But to bet on that person and to see whether the person actually can deliver the numbers, I think that's some science and some gut feels as well.
Yeah, right.
So Platform E, when we started, we have actually, we're fortunate to have Professor Virginia to be our professor in residence. So she's the one who curated all the basic courses. So the motto is really, you start with an idea and hopefully you graduate with a business. But for us, if someone comes in and, he or she, after going through the course, come up with a entrepreneurial mindset and skill set, I think, that's what we want to achieve.
Yep.
And so if they start a business, for example, is a platform. So we have actually, really go out and curate angel investors as well. So we have a group of angel investors that supports us because I think it's important. And then making Platform E a place for them to meet and to have conversation.
Right.
Right. So when Graham, shared with us his passion and doing this podcast, I think we definitely see eye to eye in making this happen.
Yeah.
So that's how we connected again, and that's why he's here.
So can I ask, what sort of advice would you give to Graham at this stage in his journey? So the podcast has been around for a little while. It's clearly getting traction. There aren't any sort of settled business plans in place by the sound of it. It's more ideation.
Yeah, there is a plan, but it's mostly up here.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a short pitch deck PowerPoint which I've shared.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of the challenges, isn't it? When you're an entrepreneur as well, is that the plan is here, up here, and you have to then articulate that to other people. So anyway, advice, please.
And I guess actually when I say there's a plan in place, what I have in mind is something down on paper which you can go to potential investors with.
I remember one evening or one afternoon, I was in your room and we were talking about, is there a business plan and all this? And I remember you were scribbling something. To me, I think at early stage, the plan is as good as today. Right? Tomorrow, when you hear something, when you discuss something, it could be something different. So it has to be alive, right? As the more you talk to people, the more insights you get, because everything is up here is what you think is the best. But if you're creating a business, you're creating a product, you have to listen to what the customer wants. In this case, audience. Your audience will be VCs, investors, entrepreneurs, right? Because stories, if you can connect to stories, you can relate to the stories, then you can think about your own stories. I think that's interesting. Graham shared, thank you for trusting some of my insights, but he shared the initial pitch deck. And I did give him some feedback because, of course, the first thing you look at is if I want to create a media company, so who are the other media company that's similar to what you want to create? Is it a new space that you want to occupy? Or is it something that you feel is there, but you think you can do it better, right? So for investors, I think first, when I look at it is typically for founders, it's like, I've got so many things, and because I'm afraid I missed out something, and if investor may not know that these are the A to Z that I want to present, so you tend to clutter it, and then more decks does not mean is better, because we actually, for most VCs, because they screen like hundreds every day. So your attention span is really, and because of the training, you just zoom into certain things. So one of the early advice that I gave is, so he presented, and I think is a very good research on what are the other media companies that are similar. So every
competitive overview.
Yes. So every page, every slide is a media company. So there are like maybe 5 or 6 media companies that have been successful in Asia, have raised money, blah blah blah. But for me, that I've no idea. Assuming I've not invested in a media company, right? I'm just new. I don't know Graham. I don't know the story. I look at it, 5 different slides. And then, I don't have good memory, so I can't remember the number. What I want to know is, I want to see one page. If you are comparing, just give me that summary page. I mean, it's something very, very simple, but most people, just
Right.
Yeah, so that was the first advice I gave to Graham, and then he was a very good student. He came back.
I did actually do it.
Yes.
Did you? I did my homework.
Yeah. And it was really clear, one page, right? So this is what the others are doing. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, right.
Differently. So for me, okay, that's very, very simple, very clear.
Yeah.
Okay, then we move to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's important to give context, but what more important to paint the vision of the future and what it is you're trying to achieve. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe actually, just in terms of numbers, because they sort of say you try and keep your pitch deck to 15
I
slides?
think 12, 15 is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so within that, then how much is context versus about you?
Well, it really depends if you're pitching to an angel investor,
Right. Yep.
or to a VC. For me, I think my personal style is I try to keep, if I'm not too sure about it, so less words.
Yeah.
Of course, facts is there.
Yeah.
But, less words means that you can react to the situation. You can react to the question that, people throw at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, that was something that we were looking at.
Yeah.
But of course, numbers is there. It has to be there.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that, of course, the vision of the founder needs to be very clear. And that's one of the most difficult things to formulate.
Right.
Right. So if you ask Graham right now, what's his vision?
Graham, what is
Hello.
what is your vision?
So one of my answers to that, and I'll share that with you because it's not completely finalized, is I tell people that I want to build the MTV of the startup world. And of a certain age, they'll nod their head. But anyone who's sort of under a certain age, they kind of look at me like,
I get that.
Yeah. So for what I think, for those who do get it, and I suppose, I kind of understand who the audience is that, they'll understand who MTV is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, there's a generation that maybe they understand who MTV are, but they don't get why MTV. But for me, MTV was, it radically changed the media landscape. It came in, it took a very accessible and cheap form of content, and it democratized the whole storytelling process for a generation of musicians. It gave a voice to, there was no R&B or black music on TV at that stage, but Michael Jackson would never have existed without MTV's support, right, at that kind of levels. They gave these people a voice, and I think it's similar to the startup world, is there's all these artists, if you like, who are these startup founders and investors as well, who just don't have a voice and a platform, but you're democratizing it in a way that MTV did. And it's all a bit sort of rock and roll anyway. So I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And it's a platform.
Yeah.
MTV made most of its money, not necessarily out of the content, but everything that went around it.
Yeah, right. And so they often say that the most powerful visions have a real purpose behind it as well. So I think, it sounds like there's something that's quite meaningful there. It's from a business perspective, but also from a changing the world kind of perspective.
Yeah, changing the world, maybe too grand.
Right.
The power of story is that everybody grows up. And, if you're, for example, if you're a girl growing up, and you get told certain stories about what you should be as a girl, and you go to school and you go to college and you learn about inclusion and equality and stuff like that, but at the end of the day we're telling young girls stories about Cinderella, or that the way that you get ahead in the world is by finding a nice boyfriend, which is effectively every single Disney movie that was ever produced for a certain era. Then there's something wrong, because look at all these amazing startup founders out there, and there's a lot of women now coming through the ranks. And I look at that and think, well, they're just not getting the stories out there. Because if I can help tell the story of Rena or the story of Jodie as an example, that will inspire young girls and boys as well, but young girls out there, and they'll go, oh, actually, I don't have to be Cinderella. There's an option out there. And, changing the world, I think, okay, I don't want to change the world, but at least I can give the people who deserve a voice a platform.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we're going with this.
I think I like the fact that, Graham is leaning towards giving a platform to those, who has something to share, but not necessary to be on the mainstream media, like, appear on CNN and, all those stuff. But I think there was once I shared with him, I'm very supportive of a platform called Kiva.org. Basically is a micro lending platform. Basically, same thing. They work with local NGOs, and because those so-called micro entrepreneurs that they're helping, like probably a farmer who needs to raise $500 to buy 2 cows, and the 2 cows probably produce milk, and he could sell in the market. So to me, that's entrepreneurial as well. But because those people probably illiterate, and they probably live in Africa, India, and all this, so they don't have a voice.
Yep.
They have to work through the NGO. And what the NGO did was they highlight the stories on Kiva, and investors or lenders like us basically read the story, see the photograph, although we don't hear the voice, but we resonate with this, right? And is I think one of the best run social enterprise.
Yep.
What amazes me is that, one story about someone wanting, to raise $500 buy 2 cows, there are like, 50, 100 people around the world lending $25. And you know that the interest rate is so minuscule that you probably have bad debts as well. But all these people, not knowing each other, we form groups, and we actually help this person realize a dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought, okay, that's one category. But podcasts, you look at this setup, right? If perhaps, Graham will travel to Africa, but if someone picks this up and say, hey, I can do it for my community as well, I can give them a voice.
Yep.
Why not? I may not be literate, I may not be able to write and present a PowerPoint deck, but I can tell my story in their own different language. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the process a little bit. So you've got the vision in place. You've already written the pitch deck. Are you already actively in market talking to potential investors?
Yeah, just started.
Yep.
Yeah, actively raising.
Right. Okay. Maybe, and this is where Dennis, I'd love to get your perspective on this as well. If you can just talk a little bit about the process. How are you planning that out? And then also, Dennis, if you can give us some guidance then on that process, and what's the right way to go about this too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so where should we start?
Maybe if we can start with you, Graham, on where you're at.
Okay, so we're actively raising at the moment, and we, the target is $500,000, so 500,000 for 10% at 5 million pre-valuation.
Yep.
That's where we're starting. So, what we need is 18 months of liquidity to, really build up the base of the company and to establish all the potential revenue streams. And, my background is I've built businesses before, and I'm a cash flow type business builder. So, I find it, I'm being honest, I find it struggle sometimes to spend money. So I'm not that I'm stingy, but I like to get the maximum out of my investments as a real estate investor myself.
Yep.
That's how I think.
I'm sure that sounds great to potential investors.
Right,
as well.
I'm being honest, but that's how I am, right? But the point being is that, we need the money for liquidity, and this is a very lean business in the sense that we don't have to buy in lots of stock. We don't have to, inventory. We don't have to hire 6-figure salary developers to make this work, to build an AI algorithm, right?
Yep.
Our cash is to fund growth and to get to a product or a group of products which can, sell effectively, so we can get ourselves into the market, start creating revenues. And once we start creating revenues, we can actually improve. So we're in that process now. So we're not sort of funding something which, is going to cost a lot of money to get a lot of development work, and, it will take a lot of time to develop. So we're kind of different. It's not an app in that sense.
Sure.
This is money really to help us scale.
And how have you determined that valuation and what you're looking for?
So, shout out to my advisor, Kyle Ellicott, who's helped me. I mean, he's, sat down and, walked me through the figures. And this is a recent process. And he's raised funds for his own business. He is the CEO of Read Write. They have, I think, $100 million IoT accelerator, hardware accelerator in China, in Asia. Or they've raised 100 million across their whole portfolio. So he's gone through that process a number of times. He's based in Silicon Valley. So, he does this every day. And the deal is look, you help me work these numbers out. And really, this is the starting point. You help me work these numbers out based on what you know, what you think from my story and what the market will say as well. Yep. And then in return, I'm hosting his podcast on Asia Tech Podcast. So, but there's a buy-in at every level. It's not like he's doing something for a mate or for a favor, but he believes in Asia Tech Podcast as well. So, for me, it's like if I needed advice about valuing a company or structuring a company, or in that sense, from the investment side, I would go to Silicon Valley because that's where they know the most. They've got the most experience there. If I want to find, that kind of knowledge about, fundraising from the startup side, I would go there, and he happens to be there. So for me, that made complete sense.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, Dennis, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so actually, I've been working with Graham on his company. We of course we do need to have a company first to even begin on the process of, say, fundraising, right?
Yep.
So on that part, I think in that sense, I also work with Graham, like how Kyle has worked with you, I guess. So the thing is, there's a few basic things that you, if for most startups, they actually have to take note of course, to understand the legal entities first. So, like, say, of course, having a company in Singapore, right? First we talk about like different entities, right? We have people that that mention, like, say, sole proprietor, partnership, limited partnership, things like that, and lastly is company. Although most people would always hear, I should set up a Singapore company to actually start to do a startup and things like that. That's the reason for that, and that is actually the legal characteristic that that allows the investors to come in as a shareholder of the company, and then from there you can then do your fundraisings, and then also on the the equities portion.
Yep.
Yeah. So that is first thing to take note of. Then the other things is actually on the part about planning for the capital structure of the company. So I worked through with Graham basically on the initial kicking start the company first, right? And also having a good enough number of shares allotted to himself to actually allow that, in the future when the shareholders come in, you're not going to just be talking about because there's always the thing about talking about shareholding percentage, right? But then you're not just like looking at it as percentage. You actually have like a number of shares being allotted out.
Yep.
So and that's actually to all startup. I would say that you plan it properly. You can actually have your shares the number of shares issued to be like, say, 100,000 for $100. And then from there, when you do subsequent fundraisings, and when you plan from there, you can actually issue the effective proper numbers of shares.
Yep.
For say 10%, right? You can actually be issuing another 10,000 number of shares, and not instead of just because there's the lack of understanding that everyone thought is par value, which is like $1 for one share. Actually, Singapore company don't practice that anymore. So the good thing is, if you take note of this, then you won't have to actually go through a process of like doing subdivision of shares to subdivide like 100 shares to 100,000, and that's another process altogether to pay, right? So the thing is, so that is one point to set it right from the start. Yeah, so that is another point. So the cap table is something that sounds quite overwhelming, I guess, to most startups, but actually it's not that tough. Yep. There's definitely a few templates out there, right, on the market. But the thing is that you also want to take note of a few points in the cap table, like, say, the pre-money valuation, post-money valuation. That means something, not just valuation of the company.
Right.
Yeah. So
what stage of the process do you need to put the cap table together?
actually like beginning from now. So there's the plan for as Graham said, that there's a plan for $500,000 to
do I have a cap table?
It's coming up actually. So there's something that I have to sit down with you and then say, okay, what's the plan? What's the minimum?
But here's the good thing is that, working with someone like Dennis is like, I know somebody's got my back on that because I'm not going to get around to that. So somebody's going to okay, we need to sit down and do this. All that kind of stuff, even like to the basics of, just setting up the books, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to do the payroll or stuff like that, but you'll set it up for me so that I can get it right. Because, I think this is the problem with startups like myself.
Yeah.
And just startups generally, is that we're just so busy building the business that all this other kind of stuff just falls aside. And then it becomes an issue later on. And, I don't want that. I just want to get it clean from day one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually on that point, that's a good point because there are different types of founders actually, and I've seen quite a number. So the thing is that there's the founders that would totally just outsource this, on everything, but there's the founders that take parts in some of the process, which I think is very important that you work with an advisor that's flexible on this also.
Yeah.
So that is that's where I think we have to be flexible, our advisors and stuff.
Well, it's an interesting one actually, because then, you sort of think actually focus on your expertise. So, do what you're good at, that's what they say. So, of course, especially when you've got complexities around things like developing a cap table, obviously you need external support for that. But I guess then, what you're looking for in a founder is someone who is at least interested in different parts of the process, but still while focusing on what it is that they're really strong at.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, thinking back when I just spoke to Graham at the start, right? I understand the vision there's the lack for the voice, right? But other than that, it's actually not just the lack of voice, and also the lack on the comprehensiveness of the ecosystem itself. Yeah. So there wasn't like the right advisor for. I mean, like even on the professional space for that. So, Graham got me like all burned up and like ready to go and do this and share the knowledge and see how actually to bring in more advisors to come into that space. I believe that will resonate with Rina.
Yeah. I think coming back to what you have shared, as an investor, the first thing I look at is the cap table. Yeah, so it's very important who are your shareholders. The person on the cap table might be my enemy. So right. I think the right advisors, the right shareholders is very important, especially of course angel stage. I would love to be the first angel. Yep. But in this space, angels do act in a pack. Even VCs, we talk to each other. It's a very small community. Right. So obviously. Picking the right shareholders, your first investors, is equally important as your team. Yeah. Who gets on your board of advisory? Because that person, if he has some track record, he wouldn't be putting his name on your advisory board if he has not done a due diligence. So most of the time when we invest, was it Graham that has invested? Okay, because he's done, his 2 of 3 deals are good deals. Yeah. So that shortens the due diligence. So if you ask most of the investors, we tend to give priorities to referrals.
Right. And that was going to be my next question actually then. So, Graham, where you're at, so you're actively already speaking to people. How do you find them? How do you find those potential investors?
Well, I mean, Rina made a good point about, considering investors as part of the team. And so, those conversations are going to start with people around me first. I think you have to because, at an early stage, a lot of it's portion of that is about trust, isn't it? So, what I'm looking for in investors, like a team of investors, obviously, is that people I can trust, people I can work with. And I'll be brutally honest, is that saying I don't really, just need their money. What I really need is the expertise that comes with it. And that's what I want from an investor because it's like they're committed to this business, they're in. and they're bringing in that expertise that I don't have necessarily.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of money out there now, and I could easily go out and, I could even go to a bank and raise the money to a certain extent, right? So, or, liquidate some assets, for example. But I think, I look at an investor as somebody who could help build this business, not actively hands-on doing that, but they could make this happen.
Yeah.
So I need somebody who could be part of the team, who buys into the dream, who sees the vision, who can help, bring people to the table and open doors as well.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what everybody kind of wants from an investor. Whether or not they get that, it's a different matter. I think that's kind of the promise, isn't it? But that's the ideal scenario. That
I guess then maybe it comes down to the founders' objectives, what they're hoping to achieve. But what do you guys recommend?
I think at early stage, it's important to get, Dennis said, good mentors, especially people who understand this space.
Yep.
Because this is a very unique space, right? And there are not many media company out there, right? So I think it's important that Graham gets, a team that believes in the same vision, gets the advisors or the investors on board. But there's one thing that I always share with the startup founders. If you get investors and, if this guy is really helping you in all this, there's certain things that is very, I think is quite common in the industry practice, because most startups can't afford advisors or board of directors. But, be realistic. There is no such thing as free lunch.
Yep.
So you have to also realize that people are giving their time to you. You have to think about how you're going to pay them back, or at least show your gratitude, right? Because obviously, now you're raising $500,000. That's not enough even to pay yourself. But if you have an advisor that's walked through the journey with you, one of the things that you could do and think about it, or work with your accountant, besides really rewarding your team in stock options and all this, the advisors, you could do the same thing as well. Because if they don't work on the company, even if 10% of nothing is nothing, right? But people feel, even if they are multi-millionaire and all this, it's always nice to have that feeling that, okay, Graham actually thought about giving me something. It's not about the value. It's about, I own this, a little bit of this. And people feel proud that, you don't have to declare that I own 0.01% of the company. But, these are some of the things that, especially in Asia, the older generation, the mentors, the, white hat, great, old men, they like this kind of things, right? That, you thought about me, not just my money,
Right,
but,
yeah.
To have that sense of belonging is important.
Making them feel like they're a part of the journey.
Yes, even,
Yeah.
most of them, because they're sincerely out to, like our mentors in Platform E, they're really out, wanting to help. But they can reject, that's fine. But, you have to do your part. And this is probably a little bit Asian, but it just makes people feel good about it, right? If they don't want it, that's fine. Or you can say, I always say, if you don't want it, you can, if it materializes, it becomes, your 1% becomes $1 million, 5 years later, you can donate to your charity of choice. Right? Because some of them I don't need that 1 million. But it feels good.
Yeah.
So this is something that I always tell the startups. But it's definitely up to the team. But you're building something.
Yeah.
You need people. You need a team.
Yep.
So don't think that you're gonna hold on to everything. And eat the whole pie. The pie, if you get the right team, is gonna be big enough.
Yeah.
Actually, carrying the point from Rina, right? I think this is a very important point actually for Graham, that when you go out in Asia, right, it's really ingrained in us, I believe, because I have personal experience with that. Like I have a mentor, actually a VC owner. I'm still 20 plus, right? So the mentor, although he didn't invest in my company, or like I didn't need investment, right? So they're just talking from there, and then he say like, I want to be around, just mentor you and things like that, right? And it goes a very long way. It's just like sometimes I bring something from overseas and say, hey, I got you something. Maybe you should like say watch World Cup and then just have a cup of beer, a glass of beer, and it's on me and stuff, right? And then like from there it builds that relationship, right? And he's always constantly looking out for me. It's the same when you do the same thing for like the person, right? Yep. So I was always keeping a lookout for like startups that I can like introduce him. Like there's a certain area he likes and things like that. So it's like that sort of I say it's a culture, and it's actually a wonderful thing actually, because this little action brings a long way. Even for your investors, it's the same thing. Like talking to each of our investors is actually very important in the startup, right, itself. And I think there's a lot of like a lack on that in the culture. I mean, like also in the practices I see also.
So do you think even in this phase that Graham's in now, where he's looking for investors, that there should be a bit of almost investor dating going on?
Oh, he's always dating actually. Right. It's constant dating actually. Yeah.
Flirting.
Now he's flirting stage. Eventually dating and yeah.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, because it sounds like, what you're both talking about is the importance of relationships.
Yeah.
And, particularly from your perspective, what you're looking for is someone who's really bought into it.
Yes,
So-
especially at this early stage where you have no revenue, you have a dream, but everyone has a dream, right? So I think some of the things that probably the accelerator or the incubator don't teach you are some of the soft skills that you need to learn.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
manners, respect. I've got like everyone sending me stuff on LinkedIn. And first they call me Mr. Neo. Second, they say, can you invest in me? I mean, those are basic stuff,
Just
right?
straight off the bat, they're just coming in with
and
right.
I'm so sad that they send this kind of message. You can't feel a tiny bit of sincerity. And the worst is the moment the guy asks for you to connect and you click yes, in 2 seconds there's a long email.
Yep.
All right, that came in. So I'm not stupid. None of us are. So how would you? So it's obviously a mass email.
Yes.
Now, I think that's a wrong start, because it's just like going to Orchard Road and shout, "Invest in me," and
Yeah.
I'll be surprised if nobody calls the
Yeah.
mental health hospital. But tiny things like
Yeah.
this.
But then that brings me back to the question then, how do you find these people? So, if relationships are key and there's an element of dating required, how do you find them? How are you finding them?
So, I mean, I'm fortunate in the sense that my business is a great way of contacting people. It's an amazing business development tool as well. If you have a podcast, you connect with people. There's something special, isn't there? I mean, you do a podcast interview with somebody, you share something. Like, us four sitting around this table now, we'll go away and we've created something together, which will last forever.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, as a business development tool, it's great. You could have a coffee with somebody, but there's nothing there apart from a conversation. This conversation's captured, we created something. So, to answer your question about how, I think my best way, and we all sell some way, we all live by selling, and some people are great at picking up the phone, and I've tried that, didn't work. I've done that in my former life, and some people are really good at networking, like going to networking, elevator pitch, and I'd rather fall into a hole in the ground than go to those kind of events.
I just want to point out Rena's face when you just mentioned that.
Right.
So what? This is no good. Stay away from this.
We're not of that type.
I'm not a good networker.
I
I'm
hate
probably
it.
staying in the corner.
All that sort of, so what do you do and all that kind of, I just find it nonsense. I mean, not that it doesn't work, but it doesn't work for me or a certain type of person, and maybe Rena as well. So, and then some people are really good at writing, like blog posts and stuff, and just find that my format is what I do. I double down on that, and I do podcast. And I think, the best way of me building that team that we're talking about is just getting my story out there.
Yeah.
And one thing I've really found, and I've learned this, and even in my later stages of life, I'm learning, it's like, I've discovered that one of the best things that I've done, not to blow my own trumpet, but it's like, one of the things I've discovered, if you like, is that if you tell people what you do, that's fine. Like, people get it. and they're like, oh, okay, so you build apps. Okay, that's interesting. But if you tell people what your big goal is off the bat, it achieves a completely different result. And that result is that either they sort of look at you and walk away, like, okay, I'm not interested. Yeah. Or they start asking you questions like, oh my God, like, so tell me about what the MTV of the startup ecosystem is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've thought, like, screw it. Like, I'm not going to beat around and tell people that I'm a podcast. I'm just going to tell people this is what I want to do. And if they don't get it, then I'm not wasting anybody's time.
Right, yeah.
So longer answer to your question about, how do you attract those people is you just go out there and tell people what your goal is. And you either attract people or scare them away.
Yeah.
And I think that's the desired effect.
We must have done something right to attract you
right.
to be here.
Well, it's funny you say that, Rena. When I first came to Platform E and we sat, and we had a coffee here, and it was really early days, and you told me about what your vision was for here. It's like, well, I was sold on that. Like, I could have just sort of thought, co-working space.
No, we're not.
Exactly, but I got what you were trying to do. And, I think that sold me on it, and I thought, wow, that's how you do it. You tell people not what it is or what you're doing, but where you're getting to.
Yeah.
And that attracts a certain type of person. I don't think everybody gets that, though.
Yes.
Some people want to see, like, okay, look, I want to know exactly what you do. I want to put you in a box.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well then, so on this then, where are you at in the process?
In raising?
Yep.
Actively raising.
And
I don't think that ever is going to stop, is it, as a founder?
Can you talk a little bit about any successes so far or challenges that you're finding along the way?
Well, the successes is they haven't told me to piss off
right.
yet. So I take that as a success. We're having a conversation. It's ongoing, yeah.
How long have you been actively
raising?
Yeah.
A month maybe,
right, okay.
So 5 weeks, 4
early,
weeks. Yeah, it's early stages, yeah. It got to a stage where I thought, right, okay, now is the time. Now that we've got the base here in Singapore, now is the time to, take this to the next level.
Yeah, okay. And so, all right, so you're a month in, it's still quite early.
Yeah.
Are there any guidelines on how long this process normally takes?
Well, it really depends. I've seen people spending all the time raising money, years, just because they're so fixated about the valuation. If you're not selling, the valuation is not important. But if you're so fixated, I really need to raise 5 million. So I will ask them, today, if I give you a check for 5 million, what are you going to do? Do you have hands like octopus and every one of you that you can deploy the money, 5 million? But usually, if I said, we invest in 1 million or 5 million, it will be in tranches. Nobody gives you money without any milestones.
Yeah.
So sometimes, especially in early stage, don't be so fixated about the number. If you get, to try to raise $500,000, $1 million from one person, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But if you get a few, and of course you need to do your research, your target. Right? As much as investors get to pick and choose who they want to spend that $1 in their pocket, the startups have choices as well.
Yeah.
So it's important to do your research. And even if that investor, but you really want that person to be on your board. And he said, no, I'm not going to invest $500,000, but 50,000, 100,000.
Yeah.
Just take it.
Yeah.
Because, you take it, you use that money to build your business, valuation increases rather than, just a piece of paper going around, I want 5 million, I want 5 million. But, any amount of money that comes into the business will hopefully, bring 10 times, what you need to achieve. But if zero, I've seen people raising like for 2 years. Is still nothing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so actually, adding on to Rena's point, right? Actually, that's very true about like money coming in is actually a validation of the company's visions or of the value or the value itself, actually. So it's like you can actually tell people, I have someone on board really, invested in this and you can even support with the what the investor, the one that came in and that what he says. So that's only one point, but actually there is another thing that to take note is that like I mean, you are running a private company, and there's a limit on the number of shareholders. So that is also a long battle that you have to plan properly in that sense, right? So it's like there's 50, the number is 50, magic number, right? And then you have 500,000 that you want to raise 500,000. So there has to be like a minimum
Pot.
ticket, ticket price for that ticket, right? So and I think Rina got it like around that 50,000 to 100,000 for angel raising, because that's also depending on the investor themselves. So and also taking another consideration that how are they going to come in? Are they also going to be maybe an advisor? Depending, because that is like the rewarding the extra reward to actually like let them be part of the advisors. Then it's a strategy actually.
Yeah.
So investment is like getting their skin in the game, but actually the advisor portion is to make them drive them further, drive your relationship further, and also sort of like a commitment to you. Because in the advisor agreement, there could be like things that you can set up with them, like say, can you do a monthly meeting with me, a call, and then maybe talk about this specific area, on how we can actually improve, like say, the business operation and things like that.
Interesting.
So that are things that I think is very important to plan, which I'll be playing with you on like not only on just like how you're going to raise it, but how you're going to break down the fundraising. With the different people.
Typically, if the guy comes in as an advisor, or this person, friends, family that you want to bring in, if you're raising at X valuation, and this person you really want him to come in or her to come in, you can give a discount because once he's come in, you've got an extension, another person going out to raise money with you. Or for you, because any money that he or she brings in just increases his own valuation.
Yeah,
right.
That's a
So
great point.
at this stage, don't worry about it because
be flexible.
Yes.
I hear you. I think what you're saying and what I'm taking on board is don't get stuck on that amount, that valuation, because it may not happen, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is momentum here, isn't it? Because you bring people on, and
the two things very important. The first dollar that someone gives you as an investor, the first PO your customer gives you, that validates a lot of things. If anything else, it's just a deck. It's just a dream.
Yeah.
So that is the two most important thing. And the other thing that you want to look at is angel investors. So typically the profile is they're probably very successful. They've owned some businesses. Now, is your business or your product, synergistic to their business, right? Because if I'm an investor and, assuming you're doing a payment gateway and my business could use your payment gateway, then you're like, okay, I have an investor, I also have a customer. Even if he doesn't pay, there's a pilot, there's a validation, right? So think about, who needs to be, who needs this product or needs this service, right? So I think the more research you do about your potential investors, it's like dating, right? You have a certain profile that you want to target.
And actually, I had a friend who was a startup founder and went through this whole investment raising process, and she said that it was full-time commitment for 6 months. So actually, she ended up losing a little bit of track on what was happening with the business because she was so invested with her time in doing the raising. So, I don't know. Any advice around that?
I think, if you're raising serious money, and you only raise serious money when you have some traction and you have a team. So having a number two to run the business is important. So you guys among the team members, right? You got to divide who's doing what, right? So what I would advise Graham right now is, now what I can see, I mean, I'm very straight talker. It's just you, right? What if Graham decides that, tomorrow I strike lottery and I'm going to Hawaii? That's it. What happens? Is it a business that you built that you're irreplaceable. There's no, but I think what you're trying to do right now is getting other people to host, and creating this podcast like a hub and spoke kind of, business model is good. Yeah, but it's also the key man insurance. Like, for example, I've had instances where we invested in a scientist and the algorithm is here. Is an actual case, we listed a company and one day he just felt that he wanted to be the chairman of the company, and he said, Mr. Chairman, if you don't resign, I'm going to switch off.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage all this risk? Because investing in that person is a good thing, but that person, is two sides to a coin, no matter how you slice it. So as an investor, how do I manage those risks?
Really good point.
You got to think about it. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Graham, any challenges specifically that you're facing at the moment that you'd like to sort of discuss, getting some advice or guidance on?
Yeah, I think, I'm quite clear about where the revenue is going to come from. Whether or not it comes from there is a different matter, because you put it out in the wild, things can change, right? But I'm quite clear about what the revenue paths are. I mean, there's 5 distinct revenue channels which we're building for, which is fine. And there's established precedent in all of them. We're not like, building something that doesn't exist. So that's fine. Now that's just a case of resources. The challenge really is team building, because, Rena's identified it, that I'm really aware of what the risk is in the business, and it's me, and that is like, it's built around one person, because it really, officially it is one person, right? So now building that business, there's operations and process and automation and all that kind of happening, and building the platform, but there's still, at the end of the day, there's there's decisions being made by one guy, right? So how do you deal with that? That's the challenge. So building a team, I'm not really in a position where I can go and invest a lot of time going out and finding a co-founder, right? Which is different. If I came in with 2 co-founders, it's different, right? Because that would have been set up. But I'm happy with that, because I think as a mature entrepreneur, I don't really need a co-founder, right? I'm kind of quite clear about what the business needs to be and how, to run a business. I don't need that kind of emotional support a co-founder could bring, right? Yeah. But, I'm aware that, like a number 2 we need, right? And, there will be people who need to run big parts of the business in the future. So all that stuff. Yeah. Is the challenge, the real challenge. That's what I'm focused on now, is get the people, because all the tools and the resources are there. Now I need the people. Yep. And fortunately, we're in a business where people are only sort of one degree of separation away, in the sense that it's not difficult to go out and say, hey, this is what we do. So people are coming to us, right? So that's okay. But like any challenge, recruiting people requires resources and time, and there's no definites, because you get people in, they go out the other door, you never know. Yeah. So that is my number 1 challenge. Yeah. People, getting the right team. I don't think that's unique to my business, but
no.
Unfortunately, like I said, I don't need like an AI graduate who costs like 150 grand a year. Yeah.
So then I guess back to Rena's point then about that staged approach to funding, then is that going to be one of the solutions to this challenge?
Could be, yeah. There's no, I don't have a black and white view of what the solution is, and that, and you don't go to investors saying, look, this is what I want, and this is what you're going to give me. Yep. You sit with the investor and say, look, how can we make this happen together? And if an investor says, look, it's going to happen, look, I suggest you do it like this, then I'm open to talking about that. Yep. And if that is the better solution, then that's what I think is the number 1 option. So absolutely, possible.
Okay. Because I think at this point, it's important that all startup founders, or they probably need to realize that whatever you're thinking today, tomorrow, the week after, you may need to pivot, because the world is changing so fast. Yeah. And if you're so fixated with your own little thing, and then you'll just be working alone on that little, dream of yours.
Yep.
So that is not to say that you completely change everything, but it's about survival.
Yep.
It is about at this stage, how are you running a marathon?
Yeah.
Or are you have a big dream, but you just want to run 100 meters, and if it doesn't work, then just wind it up and start something new again. I mean, there's also a trend like this,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But for most investors, we want to bet on the marathon runners.
Iron
Iron
Man,
Man, right?
Iron
I was
Man,
going there. I was going there.
Marathon's just the
Yes.
last part, really.
Yes, and that is all not just physical. It's really in your mind.
Yeah.
I know.
And this comes back to the point at the beginning as well that you were talking about, that really investors are looking at the founder themselves. That's what they're investing in, rather than the business so much. It's the founder.
Can you if we together build a Ferrari car, can you really drive that car maybe one lap, but to sit and be a Ferrari one driver like 40 laps? Can you really do it? Right.
Okay. Well, Graham, I mean, it sounds like you're already really progressed with this process. Actually, you're well into it. So you've got the pitch deck already out in market. You're already actively pursuing funding. Is there anything that you need additional guidance on that you want to talk about today?
Guidance on everything. I mean, I need help with everything. I don't think I know all the answers, but I think it's been, everybody's kind of talked about it, about building the team. I need people to watch my back in a way, because I think the danger is in being a sole entrepreneur, and especially one who's quite sort of focused on a goal, is you can end up either going off in the wrong direction, being the king of your own castle when you need somebody just to slap you and say, hey, look, just come back a little bit this way. You're kind of going off.
Yeah,
Or,
I've got a cane in my room.
there you go. You kind of have to have those kind of people who are going to pull you back. And I need that. That's what I need guidance with. And there are people who just sort of say, just perspective. Because, you can just... I mean, the business I had before, I had a telecoms business. It was really successful. We made a lot of money, a lot of cash.
Yep.
And when you get in a business like that, you just think you know everything.
Right.
And I was quite young at the time. And the business just undone itself because, we made so much money that we stopped worrying about things like competitors and stuff like that. Yeah, we just, whatever we do, we're going to make money. And it was that kind of thing at one stage. And I think, I really, really wish at sort of like year 9 or 8 in the business, like I had somebody who just sort of say, Graham, look, you just stop doing that.
Right.
Because there's somebody going to come into your business and things are going to change. Like Rena says, the world changes.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you realise, oh, crap.
We missed that.
Yeah. Now what happened? Yeah. Suddenly, we're not making all this money anymore. Why? Why don't people love us? So I really, that was my big mistake. I really wish that had happened. And I was desperately seeking it at the time, but there wasn't the sort of, if you go back to like early 2000s, there wasn't those kind of advisors out there.
Yeah.
It was a very different world.
Yeah.
So to answer your point about like guidance, I needed guidance. I need specifically, if somebody's like built a media company in any form, I would be really interested to have a chat. If they don't have to come and build another media company, but they can be part of that story.
Yeah.
If they know what's broken in media, I'd love to talk to them, because I think those people bring a lot to the table. Because, media is not, old media is not going away anywhere. It's still powerful. It's still a very big industry.
Yeah.
What can they bring? It's still, the thought processes are all there. I'd really like to talk to those people, if they think, as well as the people who know new media, like people who have graduated from Facebook, who know all that, ad sales and so on, who can see something like this and think, wow, there's an opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, great. Any final tips or advice from you guys?
Well, Graham talked about, needing someone to watch his back. I think that's what one of the vision and things we do at Platform E. So everyone that comes into the community, we encourage them to look after each other because of the network we have, not just in Singapore, but in the region. Myself, my team, the council members. So one of the example that, when we spoke to Graham, so me and my team will make sure that, even if someone comes in and have a table, we're interested in the person, what he does or what she does. And I force them to actually present to me what they're doing so that we can, bring some value add to him or her. So for instance, one of the conversation we had with Graham was, he's like, I need to talk to people with media experience. So we happen to know one person who was in traditional media, retired, but very, very, prominent person. And because of the relationship, we managed to get him, to have lunch, to be
You did a podcast.
We did a podcast. I mean, for that person, you probably need to pay a lot for him to write something or to be on a podcast because people in the media, like I said, is a bit sensitive.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I think we do that because we feel that person will give very good perspective to Graham. Probably mentoring him in this space because, like I said, the traditional media is there to stay as well. But how do we use technology to bring life to the traditional media, right? So I'm glad they met, and I think they had a good session.
Yeah, we did. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Dennis?
Yes. So basically, I think the one challenge and the biggest challenge is that you're the sole founder, and that's as Rina mentioned about the so-called that need to have a sort of a insurance for this key man, right? So I think it definitely is not the immediate solution towards this problem, but I don't think it's a problem. Also, it depends on perspective again, right? So but the thing is, when you talk about perspective, there's gonna be different people giving you a different perspective for that. So then definitely good to have the base paperwork, which I'll be working with you, Graham, to work out things say shareholders agreement, things that shareholders agreement don't just talk about what shareholders can do, but talk about vesting of your own shares actually, so that you don't just suddenly disappear, right? I think that is actually covered in that agreement. So that actually also would give that confidence to the investors. That's something to work out with you, and also the cap table and things like that. So that all this shows that you have a plan, and also to make sure that things are all in place. So yeah, that's the advice, especially for yours.
Great. Well, very exciting.
Jodie, I'm not going to let you get away.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm going to ask you. So, I mean, I have a lot of respect for you because, you don't take any BS from me, I feel, which is great. So, in the conversations that we had, which is good because, that's kind of what I admire. What do you think? You've been quite direct in your Australian way with me and my business plan.
What you should be doing?
Yeah, sometimes you just say, hey, look, this is not working or something like that. We just had a chat and what do you think?
Well, look, I must admit, I actually didn't know that you were actively already pursuing investment and that you already had a pitch deck and that you were out in market with that. I think, I don't know. I'm really excited about with what you're doing, and obviously, really happy to be a host on the network as well. Look, I think there's a huge opportunity. There's a massive gap in this space. So I think, I think it's all good. It's all looking very positive.
All right, fine. Yeah. Okay, fine. I'll take that on board. I think it's the way that I'm looking at this is that one of the books I read early on in my development was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is a lot of people read it, and I've read
that.
it so many different
I actually
times.
read the one with Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, that's right. Rich Dad Advisors.
Co-author.
Yeah, not so great.
Yeah.
But what really stood out for me about that was that what he said was that you've got to build a team. If you're in property investment, real estate investment, which is my side business, it's you always think about it as something you go in alone and do it yourself. But the really successful ones, they have teams.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily all teams on the payroll. They would know, a good investor would know an accountant, a good investor would know somebody who could go in and appraise a building, a good investor would know somebody like a land developer, and they'd just call them up and say, hey, look, this is the project, this is my vision, come and have a look. And, you know,
Yeah.
they would trust that person. They would come and have a look at this project, right, and give them their advice and so on. And that's how those investors get ahead, because they have this sort of team that works together with these common goals, rather than joined by the fact that they're all on a contract
Yeah.
together, or one person pays another person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, you know, I think that's how I want to approach a business, is that you've got to build a really good team. to
Yeah,
make it.
yeah, and you know, I can just talk about my experience for a minute. I did a family and friends funding round last year, just a small one, and actually, it's more of a loan agreement rather than an investment where I give up share of the business at this stage. But it may turn into that, depending on next steps. We've left it a little bit open, and you know, they are all close family and friends. One person that I've worked with previously as well. So, you know, it's quite interesting because, you know, the friends, I know they've invested in me. So, you know, I think they don't have a deep understanding of the space that I work in. And so it's very much, it's about, there's a belief in me as a founder, which is, you know, kind of rewarding as well. And it's, you know, back to Dennis, your point before, there's an affirmation that, oh, okay, so someone sees value in this and what I'm doing. So great. That's really good. But one of the investors is someone who works in the industry, and that's been fantastic for me because he's brilliant. And just being able to discuss the ideas and the direction and the key trends in the market, and where, because, you know, everything's moving so quickly in advertising and media at the moment, you know, just having someone else on top of that is hugely helpful because, you know, I am an individual founder. You know, I've got a team working for me, but it is, you know, it can be a little bit lonely, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do make all of the senior decisions, and so having that network of people around really does make a difference, particularly, you know, those couple of people who are from the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm getting there. I've
Yeah.
got a really good network of people around me, I think.
Yeah.
It's just like bringing them together for the common goal now.
Yeah. But, you know, I think the other thing is too, is that you've got to like them.
Yeah.
You know, I think you're definitely looking for people who can add value, or they're happy to be quiet investors and they're just bought into what you're doing. But, you know, they need to be people who you want to spend some time with as well. And know, you know, they're going to give you some room to move too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which
yeah.
I think the same as, you know, you look for that in building any team, don't you?
Yeah. Well, that's when you look at it like a relationship, right? In business, like you're not just taking somebody's money. It's not a transaction.
Yeah.
It's a relationship.
Yeah.
You know, and you end up, you know, being part of that person's life, and likewise, they're part of your life, right?
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. I know some people can look at it in very transactional terms with investment, which is fine, but for me, it's a relationship. You know,
Yep.
when I take somebody's money, I'm not taking their money. They're giving me a part of their life, and they're trusting me to take this money and do something with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, that all comes with all those kind of like attachment as well. So that, I mean, that's how some people can just go in it completely cold. It's just money. It's
Yeah.
like going to the bank, right?
Yeah.
I can't see it like that.
Yeah.
That may be in my undoing long term, but I think there's a certain type of investor that may want that kind of founder as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think everyone, even no matter how big an investor they are, there's always something that's a little bit personal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, best of luck, Graham.
Thank you, Jodie. Thank you,
Very-
Dennis. Thank
very
you,
excited
Rena.
for you.
Thank you to our sound man as well, Bharat. Thank you. Sitting over there in the corner.
Thank you.
So today is the first of what will be future podcasts where we talk to startup founders and maybe some others who are not as progressed in the process as you are, and we'll be looking to talk to them about their journey and giving them some advice on the next steps that they can take. So looking forward to future sessions.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Asia Tech Podcast. Find out more at ATP.show.